Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Corner. I'm your host, Sally Willard. This show is a conversation with small business owners and entrepreneurs who are willing to come in and share their stories with us and with you. My guest today is Jim Stewart. Jim is a project management professional. Welcome, Jim. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sally.
And Jim, I know you'll do a much better job at telling everyone what you do, so
go ahead and do it.
Go and do it.
Project management professional, first of all. A project manager is somebody who, and this may not seem like it requires explanation, but I'm always explaining it, someone who takes and manages a project, as simple as that. Whether it's construction or high-tech or pharmaceutical, someone has to take a project from the beginning through the middle to the end. That's what I do. That's my background to do that. There's a lot of us around that do that type of thing. What I've done that's maybe a little bit different from what other people have done is to take that and do it independently. So I don't always go in and manage projects so much directly anymore, as I very often manage the project manager. I mentor the project manager. I help companies get projects started. Some of my work even leads to team building exercises along with the project management stuff. So the idea of project management is you pull a plan together, you pull the people together, you pull the budget together, and you execute on that until the very end. Again, within a company, the project manager would do that for some sponsor or for some boss. As an independent, I tend to go in less to do that and more to do it from the outside looking in to help people do that. One other thing is the project management professional. There's an organization called the Project Management Institute based in Pennsylvania. Worldwide, they do certification of project managers, and they set standards. They're a standard-setting body. In order to become a project management professional, you have to have a certain number of years of experience in the profession, managing projects at a very high level, and also pass a test to do that. I did that about 5 years ago. I'm a PMP. I recertify every 3 years or so, and I teach it as well. Sort of the nutshell of the view of project management.
Yeah. Is your background in software, and are your projects primarily in software, or do you help companies build gadgets,
Sure.
newfangled gadgets, or big things like ships?
Sure. Good question.
What do you focus on?
My background is largely in high tech, like so many people in New England. I came into the industry as a technician years and years ago, doing operating systems, computer networks. A fix-it guy at one point in time many years ago, Lotus Notes, things like that. All of those projects needed somebody to run them, so my background was working on the technical side, and one day somebody said, could you give me a list of the dependencies of one thing to another? What he was saying to me was, manage the project for me, but I didn't have the language at the time. So I gravitated from being the guy that did the hands-on of the project to the guy that became doing the hands-on plus managing it. So hands-on at night, let's say, managing the project during the day, to what I would call more pure project manager, where I was doing less of the technical work and more of the project management, probably the last 10 or 12 years or so, maybe even 15 years or so. To answer your other question, largely high-tech, although in the couple of years since I've been an independent, I've done more and more pharmaceutical and healthcare type of things, because their projects can last anywhere from 6 years to 12 to 15 years to put a drug on the market. So they need very good high-level project managers to plan and do that. So I spent most of my time on high-tech, pharmaceutical, less on things like construction. And partially because, not that I don't desire to, but the paradox is this, that first of all, they expect you to grow up in an industry. They prefer that you be the subject matter expert in that. So if you haven't grown up in construction, the mindset is therefore you can't manage a construction project. I would take issue with that, but I'm not the guy hiring me. So it tends to be more on the high-tech side. And the specific high-tech, you asked about the gadget, it was more about the rollout. It wasn't always the sexy, new, cool radio or iPod or whatever you will, although those need project managers as well. As often as not, it was something like a rollout of new technology. Back when XP was new, we need to roll out. The project I worked on was an investment bank in New York. They wanted to roll out 15,000 workstations for XP across the entire company. Well, that's a project. It's fairly mundane that it's only XP, but it was a big project, nevertheless, to get your arms around. So a lot of rollout type of stuff, and very often international.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And what companies did you work for? I assume that some of them are no longer around,
Yes.
that being the nature of technology. But
Yes.
what are some of the companies that you worked for
Prior to being independent?
before you became independent?
The last company I worked for, funny you should say that, is Genuity, which is up on 128. If you drive up there now, you see SAP up there. That's what's happened to that. Genuity was an outgrowth of GTE, which itself joined and merged with parts of Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, the company that helped form the Internet. The last job I had full-time there was as a program manager, which, for your audience, is a bit of a step above project management. A project manager tends to manage a single project. A program manager, think of NASA, a collection of projects. I was a program manager at Genuity for the last couple of years there, helping to roll out, and it's kind of technical, but what they call a virtual private network, which is a way of using the Internet to do personal private communications. I worked there. I did some work at Fidelity several years. I also worked at Honeywell Bull. I worked at Lotus for a couple of years. The thing you should know is in the past 15 or 16 years, it's been a mix for me of independence and full-time. It wasn't full-time, 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 and then independent. In the early 90s, I had my own company, which was a networking company. I did contract work through the mid-90s. When that seemed to go as soft as a market, I went full-time. I got laid off eventually from Genuity, and they folded and went back independent. So probably if you were to look at the past 15 years or so, it's probably 75% independent, and the balance of that is full-time, mostly always in high tech. And again, the pharmaceutical and healthcare comes since I've gone independent.
You mentioned, I know, in our earlier conversation that there are two ways of going out, that you go out. One could be as a contractor who you're hired by someone who the company pays the contracting company, and then you work for them and go in. And the other one is as an independent consultant.
Right.
What's the biggest difference in working those two different ways?
Excellent question. Just one clarification. You could go in directly to one of those companies and be a contractor if you find it. More often than not, they'll find it for you. Major difference, I think, is this. Recall the investment bank I went into that I mentioned. I worked there for 6 months in New York. When you go in there, it's more like you're an employee. You punch the clock at 9 in the morning, not literally, but you come in at 9 in the morning, you do a job, you're in the pool of people, whether they're full-time or et cetera. You do your job and you go home. You're tactical. You may have the ear of your boss, and I did in that respect. He was also a project management professional and respected and understood it. But you may have his or her ear, but you are, for all intents and purposes, working at a very tactical level, and you're there and you don't do anything else. It's your job, regardless of what you're getting paid for, which is still pretty good. As a consultant, what I try to aim towards, I turn down those type of jobs now. There's plenty of them out there. In fact, just before coming here, I saw a note from DICE that said locally here in the Boston area, project manager is by far the #1 thing. I think Java was #2. Plenty of contract work. And the consulting side, the main difference is this. You can go from project to project. I can be on the phone, as I was this morning with my pharmaceutical company. I'm here this afternoon. I have another client I'm going to see after I leave here. I can be working on 3 or 4 or 5 different companies at the same time. More importantly, you're working more strategically. I'll give you an example. In the contract example, the bank in New York, we were rolling out this XP. Here's the project plan. Here's the schedule. Go forth and do that. I don't have any input to that. If it's a flawed plan, I have to operate according to a flawed plan. In a proposal that I'm looking at now for a company out near Worcester, they're also a high-tech company, and they're looking for somebody to help them prioritize their projects. A lot of companies have too many projects. They don't know which 100 projects to do. They need somebody to come in and say, Jim, help us figure out which 5 or 6 make the most sense. On its face, that is great. However, in this particular company's case, they want some team building as well, because the team, as a symptom of the fact that they're not getting along, can't prioritize these projects. So what I'm going to go do with a colleague is go in, run a 2-day session, break down their patterns of operating, build new patterns of operating, and then from there they'll be able to more intelligently prioritize these projects. So the huge difference is, in the contract model, I'm working very tactically and I'm delivering. In the consulting model, I'm working more at the strategic level with the senior people, and in fact I was told if this effort is successful, if we do this, this is within the senior engineering people, we may bring it to the senior executive management to do that. I like that a lot better. Clearly it's more financially remunerative, but it's also more interesting. It's more challenging. It's more strategic to do it at that level. The main differences, I think.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. As a project management professional, I mean, I often ask people when they come here, what's your passion? What gets you going out? Gets you going out to the office every day?
Yeah.
What drives you in managing a project besides finishing?
Area. At one level, it's very mundane. I'm a list maker and I'm a list crosser offer. And I found that early on that I liked, and it's whatever quirk of my brain and other project managers' brain, I like the sense of accomplishment of that I've done a particular thing. I'm also very goal-oriented. It enables me a chance to accomplish a particular goal. Instead of being operational day to day, I can live the excitement of my customer. I'll give you an example of that. I used to be one of those people that said, why do people go to work? What are they excited about? They're excited about putting out a new radio or a new satellite. But I thought about it and I said, I have a very nice laptop. Somebody somewhere within the organization got excited about making a really cool laptop, and they got excited about the idea to build that, have it better than the competition, work well, have multimedia, have wireless, etc. That excites me that they're excited about it. So I can pick up that level of it from the people who want to put the product out and say, I can get behind that. If you're passionate about that, I can be passionate about creating that particular thing. There's a level of creation I think that's involved. Secondarily, there's some level of, I search for a level of goodwill, a level of, geez, am I just making the world safe for Microsoft all the time, right? Two things. When I work at the pharmaceutical, I can't tell you who they are. I can't tell you what they're doing. I'm under confidentiality. Just know that they put out, they're not putting out the latest, greatest Viagra or whatever. They're doing good things that are potentially life-saving for people. I will have the sense of reward at the end of that when this product comes out that I contributed to that and I helped make it happen. And there's a tangential thing to that. There was a guy when I classes, I teach at Brandeis too. Guy approached me and he said he had been in, I think, the Sudan and had to leave there because of all the war that's going on over there and wanted to use project management skills for humanitarian purposes. This was great. So I was able to help him find information through an organization that allowed him to use his humanitarian skills. I don't know how far he got. I've lost contact with him a little bit, but I was able to do that within that. So I think those are the main things that are rewarding about it, which is the idea that you can be creative, very, very challenging. In some cases, maybe you can change the world a little bit. And one of the other things I do is I mentor people. A particular project manager I'm working with now needs a lot of mentoring. I had this discussion this morning with somebody. They tend to take subject matter experts in companies, promote them. You're a good technician, now you're the project manager. You're good at pharmaceutical, now you're the project manager. I don't want to say they reached their level of incompetence, but they're raised to a level where they knew how to be the subject matter expert, but they don't understand scope and schedule and risk. So rewarding for me, as I've done recently, is to go and work with a project manager and say, look, if you really want to do this, here's what I would do in your shoes, and I can mentor those people. So what I found is, while I started doing this with one end in mind, which was just making a living for myself, let's face it, and doing project management, and I'm not claiming to save the world or anything like that, there are ancillary benefits, team building, making the company a better place to work. I mean, if we go into this team building exercise and the people come out and say, that was a great exercise and this is a better place to work and I'm less stressed, it's a win. That's enjoyable. So that all those things are exciting for me.
Yeah, so it's not just going in and managing projects. There's a whole lot more. You teach at Brandeis.
Right.
What do you teach project management, and is it a very structured? I think of Gantt charts, and I know
sure.
we have one to show, but
Sure.
But I think of Gantt charts when I think of project management.
Right.
And how do you teach that, and how do you teach people to manage a project?
Sure.
It's tough enough to teach people to manage a list.
You really don't. Basically, you're right about the Gantt chart. When we'll show one, the Gantt chart is a tool. It's like showing somebody and saying a hammer and this is construction. Well, the Gantt chart is a tool that you use. Well, I've taught 3 different classes at Brandeis. One is program management, which I co-developed, the senior level type of thing. Also foundations of project management, which I taught several times, and risk management. I think to your point is the foundations of project management. That's the one that says you have no knowledge, or you have 0 to some little amount of knowledge. I don't really teach you how to manage a project per se. I can't any more than the driving instructor teaches you how to drive. You know, he or she goes out, you get in a car, they guide you, etc. I know this because my daughter just got a license. So I'm guiding her with that, but I'm not teaching her how to drive. When people come into this class, I lay the foundation and say, it's not just the Gantt chart, it's scope, it's schedule, it's risk, it's all those things I talked about. I have them do a charter. Charter is a document that says what this project is going to be. It authorizes the project. You said a caveat here is not just it's a collaborative effort of people who created this class. We have them create a scope statement. So they get the idea that well before they get to the schedule, well before they get to it, there are all these things they've got to write and create and think about. We create a series of a project that's artificial, and a series of steps they go through. They culminate with doing a schedule in a project software that shows tasks based on what they've done before, costs. I've got a fake scenario for them, risks. Risks don't really go in the schedule, but they're there as well. And they come out of it with a schedule. So it's kind of fake world, but at the end of it, they have a broader knowledge of what it takes to manage a project. To your point, am I teaching them how to manage a project? No, I'm not, for this reason. At no point have I ever said to them, go in and, you know, put your foot down and make this happen. I kind of do, but they're the ones that go in the next day and say, I'm going to manage this project according to what I've learned, and you need to adhere to what I'm saying. The tough part is in the details, devil being the details, right? They've got to go in and they've got to manage the people. I don't really teach them that, except in the classes we do case studies. And in the case studies, they'll learn to interact in that and figure out the best way around. I teach them the stuff. They've got to go back and do it.
Yeah, and managing a project. I mean, I've worked on some very little ones. Just every time I come here and put the set together,
Yeah.
that's a project.
Sure.
And I have, although I have never written my list down, I probably should someday.
Sure.
But it's not always very simple.
Right.
And I think a lot of people look at projects and say, okay, well, this is what I have to do.
Right.
You know, I need to do A. I know that we have some slides to show this, but what I'd like you to do is really just, for a moment, talk about the kind of what goes into managing a project.
Sure.
I mean, you start with, I want this done.
Right. There's the managing of it and there's the planning for it.
Okay.
What starts in the managing of it is the planning for it. I'll give you a very quick example. In the PMI, the organization I talked about, Project Management Institute, they have a guide to how you should manage a project. It's not a step-by-step methodology, it's just an overall guide. They have 44 processes that they think you should follow to manage a project. 21 of them are in planning, which should tell you something. Almost half are in planning. So you should be creating your charter, creating your scope statement, creating your risk plan. Problem we have in our culture is if you sit down and start planning, your manager says, do something. Just do something. You say, oh, I'm planning for it. So the first thing you do is you plan everything out, get all your papers in place, all your scope, risk, schedule, etc. Get that baseline. Baseline means you have an agreement, approved and agreed upon schedule and scope statement. From there, the day-to-day execution should be simpler. It's hard, but it's simpler because you know what you're doing, you know what your scope is. Day-to-day, you're going around managing risk, and the best project managers really know how to manage risk. You're looking at risks, you're saying, if this comes up, we'll do this. And you're going to people, and you're saying, we talked about this, Sally, you have something due next week, we're in a meeting on the phone, how's that going? You tell me I'm running into trouble, or it's going well. Any number of the criteria that you might give me any number of answers, I update the schedule. So a lot of that is that day-to-day making sure it's going forward, managing the cash flow, managing the risk, managing the team. The fundamental of this, I had this conversation with the guy I'm mentoring, The fundamental is making sure that, in some cases, it's as mundane as saying, this is your task, when are you going to get it done? The guy I mentioned to you that I'm working with overseas, he tells me that in France, they hate that. The French culture says, you don't come up to me and ask me what I'm doing and when I'm doing it, because it bothers us. It's like micromanaging. I said, well, you know what? It's Project Management 101. So basically, can you get your boss to tell you need a report, which will then force them to give you the information that you need. So one of the more mundane aspects of that particular thing is making sure people do the tasks on time, getting them resources, knocking down risk, dealing with the sponsors, dealing with the stakeholders, making sure it's moving forward as it should. That's the day-to-day thing.
What's the most difficult part? Getting people to say, I have a problem, or getting them to accept some assistance in overcoming the project.
Of those two choices?
Yeah.
I think getting them to admit that there's a problem. Most people don't like to. They like to think that everything is fine and that they can handle it, whatever is in the psychology of that. You do a lot of being a psychologist when you're a project manager. Call it being a diplomat.
Yeah.
And try to find out.
And I know there are more things. What's the toughest thing that you encounter with people in a project?
The honest answer to that is anger. Sometimes rage.
Really?
Yeah, because in one project, which I'll go nameless, we were simultaneously trying to put the project out, and some of the senior level people who were developing the software were also being asked to wear a beeper. Now, it's very hard to go to a guy who's 40s, 50s, been developing software for 30 years, who feels he's outgrown that, and say, you have to now wear a beeper. Well, it's not my mandate. It's somebody well above me, but I'm the lightning rod. You're a lightning rod. And I have people coming and yelling at me, I don't want to wear this beeper. I don't want to do this. Just angry. And how do you deal with that? I found the best way to deal with it for me was, and again, you're the target. Then you can have lunch together, and you're happy with each other, right? So you're just the guy who's sitting there because the big manager isn't there. If you want to know how you cope with that, I found that the angrier they got, the quieter I got, the calmer I got, because one of us had to not be angry. So if you want to know the very worst thing, it's anger. Probably the next worst thing is just a level of politics. I've got this guy I'm mentoring, and he's caught between the R&D engineer who's grooming him overseas and his manager in the States who's sort of, making sure that he's doing things a certain way. And he's caught between these two, who both have good intentions, but they just have different opinions about how it's done. So I think the political nature of getting caught up in it can be devastating, especially if the team members get caught up in the politics of their bosses. You have people who've been in a company for years, don't like each other. And so the team members get caught up in the politics of that and can actually sabotage things going forward. It's very devastating to the project.
Yeah. Let's just look briefly, because time is short, but
Sure.
let's just look briefly at the slides,
Okay.
at the slides that we have,
Yep.
and tell us about the work breakdown structure.
Sure.
And how that helps you manage a project.
Okay, should I look at right over here?
Yep.
Okay. You and I had talked, Sally, before I came about what might be an interesting graphic to show people that might be different. I did a talk on the work breakdown structure at a show called Project World a couple of years ago. I call the work breakdown structure the Rosetta Stone of the project. The idea of the work breakdown structure is it's a visual to show everybody on the team, everybody in the company, every stakeholder, what the project looks like visually. It will tell you what it looks like, what the scope is, potentially what the costs are, resources and risks. What you're looking at here is a top level of a website development that I did a few years back when I was starting consulting. The very top level, it just says website. That's the first slide, and that's very easy. If we can look at the second slide, I'll show you a little bit different there. Oh, good. We can see this better than I thought we might be able to. Take a look at what happens on the second level. I hope when people watch this they can see it. The breakdown of deliverables from the top website one now goes down to design, content, test, hosting, production, and development. Your first question might be, what does that represent? Those are the upper level deliverables that together make up the website. They are arbitrary. You might come up with a different list. It would be very similar, but someone else might come up with a different list. There's no rocket science or WBS, no cast in concrete way. The problem with it at this level is I can't go to you, Sally, and say, take design 1.1 and manage it. I have to drill deeper to figure out what's below that. So if we can take a look at the next slide, You'll see what I'm talking about, hopefully. Can't see that as well, but under design, if I squint a little bit, I can see site, and I can see design presentation, and under test, I can see QA, and under hosting, I can see site available. So as we drill down to the various levels, we as a team look at it. How do we do this, by the way? We go into a room with stickies, Post-it notes, we put them up on a board, and we get the team in the room. And we move the stickies around. And as we move the sticky around, somebody says, no, that's not right, and they move it someplace else. You've accomplished two things. You've built the scope, which is what this is, and you've got team buy-in. Rather than me as project manager saying this, they're looking at it and saying, here's what we believe it to be. I'm not sure. Do we have one more level to that? Or is that the last level? Yeah. If I go deeper, by the time I get to level 3 or level 4, the very lowest level of the WBS, and just a little bit of terminology is called a work package, I can take the lowest level and assign it to somebody. Now that we agreed this is as low as we want to go in the WBS, we don't want to go too low to where we're saying move the chairs around. But we might go as low as order the chairs, right? But not move the chairs into place. Order chairs. Sally, order chairs. Bob, get the equipment, etc. Down to a level I can hand it off, manage, and monitor it. Now I've got something that shows me the scope. Anything that's not on that doesn't get done. Everything there is a task or a deliverable that needs to be done. It points out the possible costs. It points out the possible resources. And guess what? The next slide, I think, shows where it comes into the schedule, if I'm not mistaken. One more slide. There it is. That's kind of fuzzy. But the idea here is that I would take that schedule from the WBS and I would import it into my software. All those deliverables would go into there, and I would add some more tasks to that. Boom, and I have my schedule. So it's great.
Yeah, it helps you manage better.
Yeah.
Now, I hate to say it, but we're coming to the end of the show.
That was quick.
It is quick. 30 minutes flies. You have some tips
I do.
for our audience for successful project management.
I do. Sally had asked me for some tips. 3 of them. I think I could come up with 300 if we have them. Hopefully we have them handy. Get blessed by the sponsor. A project manager has all the accountability, no authority. Sponsor has to come in a room and say, Jim is my guy, do what he says. If you're not blessed by the sponsor, who is the financial person or the senior person, you will never get people to listen to you. So I think it's important to be blessed by that person and make sure that they give you their alma mater.
Okay. Next one.
All right. Stand your ground. I tell my students at Brandeis, I'm teaching you the good stuff. Go back to work, stand your ground. Do a risk plan, because what will happen is someone will say, we don't have time for all that. If you're going to get trained in it, and if you're going to learn the profession, stand your ground and tell people. It's hard for me to say stand your ground at the risk of losing your job. But I think if you're doing the right things, at least make the case to your bosses that you're learning the right stuff, and you should be allowed to stand your ground and give me a shot. Let me do the things I'm being taught. That's what I mean by stand your ground. And
finally,
rigorous risk management. Risk management has the lowest maturity of all processes in project management within this country. I've seen statistics. Figure out what your top risks are. Figure out with a team, highest risk, medium risk, lowest risk. It's very subjective. Take those risks, figure out who owns the risk, watch it very carefully. If you do that, I promise you, your projects will be much better off. You'll know what to do when the thing fails, as it fails, rather than trying to figure it out when it fails. Perform rigorous risk management. You'll be well ahead of the great majority of project managers.
Excellent. I'm afraid that we've run out.
Okay.
But Jim, it has been a pleasure
Likewise
having you
for
as
me.
a guest on the Entrepreneur's Corner. And for those of us in our audience, if you'd like to review the show, you can. If you would like to be a guest or know someone who would, visit our website and let us know. Thanks a lot. See you.
Picture a place where everyone knows your name. Well, at Shriners Hospitals, all kids are treated like family. The Shriners provide world-class medical care to kids totally free of charge. And there's a Shriners Hospital helping kids from this area. Please call this number for more information. Shriners, having fun and helping kids.